The Two Sisters, original story written by Jeannie Tarpley Fox, most illustrations courtesy Copilot AI. The old woman peered out of the ancient original glass window pane of an old enormous house in Ohio. She was looking out at the blackening, a fall night in October, her shadow ascending the staircase and wall behind her, held there by the moon that was growing outside. Cold winds gusted with whines that came inside through the sill, and outside dry leaves rolled and skittered like shriveled cupped hands around the porch and down the stairs to catch at the decaying gateposts that led to the sidewalk. Old giant bare trees lining the sidewalk whipped their arms to the wind in their mysterious evening dance of the dying year, as clouds like cotton hung like sheep in the darkening sky that was turning to charcoal, those sheep clouds illuminated by the fattening moon.
Scritchy scratch, scritchy scratch, the trees are bare, the moon will catch, the old woman murmured under her breath as she scratched gently at the dingy cold pane window with a crooked arthritic finger. She stood staring, unmoving, leaned forward as though in a pleasant trance for a while. Outside the window, along the sidewalk in front of the house, her eyes noticed two children running through the dark. They were laughing and chasing each other in a game, in the exhilaration of the chilling evening. The little girl wore the plaid dress she had worn to school, one knee sock fallen down to her ankle in her distraction, her petticoat hanging out in the back. The boy was whipping at her with a thin stick, which was received with lively laughs and screams. The children probably should be heading home. Oh, the black and white, the queens and knights, the children ran into the night, the old woman mumbled, watching them, still pitched forward and staring at them until they were out of sight. Sister, sister!
A voice called from the kitchen, where another old woman stood stirring a pot of something that was rolling steam up into her white bunt hair that was poking strands crazily everywhere.
Coming, sister, coming, dear, never far, always near,
the other old woman at the window called back, her last words trailing away as she hurried in to her sister's side at the stove.
Bring me the rutabaga,
the older sister commanded, gesturing to a cutting board with chopped vegetable pieces.
Now, what do you want them to taste like? Garlic? Cardamom? Oh, garlic, please, garlic, please. Cardamom makes me sneeze, her sister answered as she scurried to bring the rutabaga pieces, already cut and waiting. Into the pot they went, scooped in gnarled knobs for hands that released them there, along with 5 cloves of garlic. The older sister stirred the steaming concoction, and the younger sister clapped her twisted fingers gently together in childish anticipation of the medicinal dish they would soon enjoy. The sisters had been irregular lately, and there was nothing like rutabaga soup for a cure to put them right. Viola, the older sister, and Elma, the younger one, had lived in the ponderous 3-story Victorian Edwardian era home all their lives. Viola was pragmatic and hard-working. She wore her hair in one long, thick white braid that she wound up into a winding circle around her head. When her white hair was down and out of the braid, it reached to her ankles. Viola had been a school teacher for a while decades back, but having been born into a prominent Ohio family, had never really had to work.
She saw it as her greatest responsibility to maintain the house. It was a ship, and a great and grand one it was too, with its banisters to be dusted, floors to be swept, and woodwork to be polished. Neither sister was much for dusting, though, and as they aged and their vision dimmed, the dust that could not be seen became more prevalent, and it went unnoticed. But the garden needed tending, and it was hard work, and Viola attacked the garden with her strong arms and body unreservedly. Elma, the younger sister, did not like to bend over to dig or plant or weed. She felt it was unladylike to show your rear up in the air that way. Their mother had taught them to dip their knees and squat if they needed to pick something up. This was the way of ladies. That was etiquette. You simply did not put your rear up in the air. Since Alma's knees could no longer bend and squat easily, she consequently avoided bending over at all costs. Her brain had eventually become wired to the obedience of the rules of her mother and to etiquette, and finally to the obstacle of her bad knees. In this way, she avoided bending over at all costs. If something fell to the floor, and it often did, it stayed there until Viola would pick it up. This was understandably a source of annoyance to Viola, and often a point of contention between them.
"Pick that up, you silly old woman. Are you waiting for me to do it?"
Viola would snap.
I didn't see. Why are you always angry with me?"
Elma would say, and she would trail away and retreat from the room, from the offending object, and her sister kneading her hands in anxiety. Viola knew that this was all nonsense, this habit of not bending over, and she knew that a great deal of hard work involved bending over or just plain getting your hands dirty. Things needed to be done. It was just plain laziness not to see that. And Viola never stopped bending over, her ample rear heavenward, to scrape or brush or sweep, or dig or do anything that she felt needed doing. She was always working or moving, bending over and over. Viola had always been that way, a concentrated worker, busy, even as a child. As a child, morning was ushered in with the sounds of clunking and thunking and moving about in the sister's bedroom, because upon waking, Viola would immediately, still half asleep, emerge from bed to start arranging her toy horse figurine collection, or play at the toy stove, or to do any other number of play activities that were busily on her mind. Elma, still lying in bed, sucking her thumb, would quietly watch Viola for a while, until she felt the urge to get up and join in. Viola had been a busy little girl who had grown into a productive, practical woman. And it was a good thing she was, too. Someone had to look after Elma. Elma, on the other hand, was whimsical and subject to impenetrable daydreams that left her staring out a window or pinned in her rocking chair on the front porch as she sat, transfixed and spellbound by the breeze ruffling the large leaves from the giant oak in the yard. Contented, hypnotized, it could be noted by anyone from the street that she passed a good many hours this way, on the porch, staring, rocking, and occasionally murmuring things to herself that only she knew. As a young woman, Elma had found employment on occasion as a grocery bagger, office clerk, and cafe dishwasher. But the compulsion to speak in rhyme and poem had grown stronger in her with each passing year, and it was off-putting to most people, particularly her employers. The townsfolk who were her employers were kindly people, though, and out of respect for the family, Elma would be dismissed with comments like, "Business is slow, we just don't need anyone right now, and I'll call your daddy when we need someone again. After a succession of these unfortunate occurrences at a number of jobs, Elma gave up. Gave up in her mind, and gave up on trying to prove herself to the world. With each incident of Alma being dismissed, she folded her soul a little deeper within the sanctuary of the walls and windows and doors and ceilings of the big old house. There was a small consolation in the work of taking care of the chickens and the drying of herbs and flowers in the large wooden shed where they hung their tobacco. Elma also enjoyed making soaps that she fragranced with home-grown tobacco and lavender, and she crafted homemade wines from strawberries or dandelions. Anything that didn't involve too much of the bending over, Elma could find poetry in. And the house. There was consolation in the house. There was poetry in the house. She caressed the heavy wood frames of the windows lovingly, as she would a cat. Running an old bent finger over the cut of the dark brown wood and the trim around the doorways, she made her way through the house. Oh, how Elma loved the house! Embracing a door frame from time to time, she could be found putting her face and mouth close to the wood, smiling and breathing into it, as though it were a lover or a dear pet. She would whisper words, possibly poems, eyes closed in rapture, to the house. Words that no one else could hear. Certainly there was no one else around to care anyway.